Good morning, Earthlings. How you doing today? Welcome to First Contact Radio. Let's get started with our cosmic weather. All right, spaceweather.com. Looking at that, our solar wind is blowing at 425.9 kilometers per second. Our planetary K index currently at a 3, which is quiet, expected to be no higher than this in the next 24 hours. Our chance of flares are very low. 1% chance of either an M class or an X class. And then the geomagnetic storm possibility is only about a 5% chance in the next 24 hours in the mid latitudes, and a little bit higher. It gets, if you go into the higher latitudes, about 15%, but not more than that. And if we go here, we've talked about Mars is coming up. And we also had a CME that exploded yesterday on February 29th. It was on the far side. Sunspot erupted multiple times, hurling 3 CMEs over the sun's western limb. The solar and helio observation recorded the expanding clouds. You can find the link at spaceweather.com. Planetary-wise, we've entered a new month. However, the planet is, or the sign Pisces is still in effect. Pisces, water sign, so we're dealing with the conscious mind, because remember, you got all of the planets and stars affect us. When we were born, imagine that at the moment that you were born, that were all the places, the positions of the planets and stars. This kind of makes up the recipe of you, and the energies that are going on during that particular time are energies that provide the signature for who you are. So if we understand these energies and we're able to look at them, it helps us to move through life a little bit more effectively. We want to look at the large signs and the large planets and astrological bodies, and the bright ones in our light, the biggest ones around, first and foremost, are the sun and the moon. Sun represents our conscious mind, the moon represents the unconscious mind. So from the conscious mind standpoint, currently the element we're dealing with is water, because we are in the sign of Pisces. So our conscious mind is water, and the unconscious mind today, you can see here on March 1st, is still in Gemini, just like it was yesterday. So Gemini is an air sign. So our unconscious is air. So we have a conscious mind of water, unconscious of air. Now just think how air and water interact together, and you can kind of get an idea of what kind of possibilities. You can have air blowing a nice gentle breeze across water, and maybe the nice little ripples, or the wind can be blowing pretty heavily and that water could become a big storm. So it really kind of depends on how things are going, what's going on under the surface, and what's going on above the surface. So things to consider as you are beginning the day and going through the day. Now our moon phase is on its way all the way up to a full moon. We're at 56% of the way there. And on the Dreamspell calendar, we're at the 3rd position here. Now, I want to explain that yesterday was a leap year day. And one thing about this Dreamspell calendar is it doesn't count the leap year days. The reason it doesn't count the leap year days is because that was something that was added to the Gregorian calendar. It was not part of the regular count that existed a long time ago. That was something that was added in later. And so when Jose put together the calendar here, Jose Argelis, he didn't account for the leap year days, because for just the reason I told you. He didn't feel that they were part of the count and therefore should not be included. Henceforth, our day is a 3-day. So today's a electric human guided by the warrior. Electric human guided by the warrior. The phrase for today is, I activate in order to influence bonding wisdom. I seal the process of free will with the electric tone of service. I am guided by the power of intelligence. Right in the middle is our daykin. This is the human. Above it we have the guide, and then we have the 3 supporting cast members around it, which is the wind, the moon, and the hand. All right, and then of course on the Gregorian calendar, it is March 1st, 2012. So we're moving right along. Spring is not too far away. All right, we're going to start things off today. Our first bit is going to be a continuation of the September 11th In Plain Sight. I played for you part 1, 2, 3. Today I'm going to play part 4. Tomorrow I'm going to get part 5 and part 6 because this is a really good series. I'm sure you've learned a lot from it because there's some good information in here. Let me jump over to this and you can hear it for yourself.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion.
But it was a huge explosion.
I saw the two buildings. I'm thinking it was a bomb because two of them.
This is actually, we believe, debris from one of the planes that hit one of the towers on the World Trade Center. The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
In the September 24th, 2001 edition of People magazine, on page 34, an interview with Louis Cacciola, a 51-year-old firefighter assigned with Engine 47 of Harlem, New York, had this to say. "We were the first ones in the second tower after the plane struck. I was taking firefighters up in the elevator to the 24th floor to get in position to evacuate workers. On the last trip up, a bomb went off. We think there was bombs set in the building." Well, Louis Cacciola isn't the only firefighter who claims that there were explosives or demolition charges going off in and around the World Trade Center.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
as if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching.
Now, we've seen numerous reports of explosions, bombs, possible demolition charges, a pancake collapse of the towers. But have we seen any footage, anything that might support these particular allegations? And these allegations come from firefighters and officials that were at the scene and were in a position to know. Well, there is one very interesting piece of footage that was broadcast on CNN live while they were interviewing Tom Clancy. And the amazing thing is this footage was shown once and never seen again. Let's take a look. Now, as we look at this footage, the first thing that we want to note is that both towers are still standing. The sun had just risen in New York. It was 9:30 in the morning, so the camera is looking from the west towards the east, and the smoke is being blown towards Brooklyn, or away from the camera to the southeast. This gives you a clear view of the left side or north side of the towers in the Trade Center area. If you follow the left tower all the way down to the street level, you'll notice that you can see all the way down to the buildings below. Now the question is, if both towers are still standing and the smoke is being blown away from the towers, what is this huge plume of smoke approximately 50 to 60 stories high rising from the Trade Center area? This footage was shown once live and never repeated, as I've already said. Why were we never shown this footage again, and why has this event never been brought to the attention of the American public or the world? This is a critical event. It was never discussed or examined because it is inconsistent with a simple attack of planes slamming into towers. How could this plume of smoke be rising from the base of the towers if neither one of the towers had collapsed? There's one more important point to make when viewing this particular piece of video footage, and that is that the rising plume of smoke appears to be occurring to the north and west of the Trade Center area. Question: is there any other photographic evidence that might show an explosion or a plume of smoke that occurred to the north and west of the Trade Center towers before the collapse? We've heard eyewitness accounts and testimony from fire officials that indicate that there were bombs, explosives, possibly detonating charges that were utilized in the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. Is there any reason to believe that detonating charges were utilized in the collapse of the North Tower, the South Tower, or Building 7? One firefighter did say, boom, 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 that's how it went down. And many of the television reporters reported that as the buildings collapsed, both the North Tower and the South Tower and Building 7, they all appeared to come down just like a controlled demolition. Let's listen to a clip from Larry Silverstein. He was the lease owner of the World Trade Center as he gave an interview on PBS.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
About an hour ago, World Trade Center building number 7 collapsed, a 42-story building, weakened by the devastation that had occurred earlier today.
We've all seen controlled demolitions on television. Office buildings, sports stadiums, all brought down by controlled charges. And these charges and controlled demolitions take weeks of planning. They have to bring in experts and do a structural analysis of the buildings, study which beams, which girders have to have charges placed on them. And then a team of explosive experts has to come and set the charges, wire them all together in sequence. And then, finally, after everything is clear, they let the building go, or pull it. Are we to believe that 8 hours after a surprise attack in New York City, they were able to pull Building 7? How is this possible had it not been planned in advance? And if they did have planned detonation charges in place in Building number 7, is it possible that there were charges in Building 6, or 5, or 4, or the North Tower, or the South Tower?
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
as if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Just ran.
Ladies and gentlemen, so far we've seen that we were deceived, if not flat out lied to, about many of the events of September 11th. From the controversy about whether or not Flight 77 actually hit the Pentagon, to whether or not there were bombs or explosives or detonating charges utilized in any of the buildings that collapsed in the World Trade Center. And also Larry Silverstein making the admission that when it came to Building 7, they made the decision to pull it. And now we come to the main events of September 11th, North and South Towers being hit by airliners that were supposedly hijacked by terrorists. Let's take a look at some of the clips that we've all seen over and over again. On April 15th of 2004, we received a news release that alerted us to a website that was entitled www.letsroll911.org. Phil Jahan, the webmaster for this website, had taken the video clips that you've just seen and slowed them down and examined them frame by frame, and what he found was astounding. There are several different anomalies that need to be examined and questioned. First of all, what is attached to the bottom of the plane that hit the South Tower? And second of all, what is that brief flash that occurs just as the plane makes impact? Now, when we first looked at this video footage, I said to myself, well, this video footage could very well be manipulated. So I wanted to check it out myself. Well, we went and found the DVD that we had purchased shortly after September 11th entitled America Remembers. This was directly from CNN. We took this DVD and put it in our machine and examined the very clip that you've just seen. Let's take a look at it. Let's take another look at this clip in slow motion, but before we do, keep in mind that sometimes the best place to hide something is in plain sight. We've all seen this video clip, and there have been many publications that have taken frames from this video and published them in hundreds of magazines. Here's an example. On page 3, a full-size blow-up of this picture. And in this magazine, it was published on page 4. And on the back of this book that we discussed earlier, it's on the back cover. I suggest you all take a copy of your magazines and books, and if you have the video footage, take a good hard look. We've all got this. Now let's take a look at this in slow motion. As the plane approaches the South Tower, notice carefully the belly of the plane. There appears to be something attached, and just as it hits the building, there's a flash. Let's take another look in super slow motion.
This is the UFO News with Joshua Poet.
All right, Dirk, thank you very much. This is the UFO News for today. Let me go ahead and pull it up. There it is. Where is it? It is right here. All right, I got several good stories for you today. First story comes to us from England, February 24th. All right, this is the object in question we're looking at there, right? It says, I'm wondering if any other readers can help solve this little mystery spotted above Carrickfergus. It may sound a bit silly, but I saw a light out of the corner of my eye appear from my bedroom window at about 8:15 p.m. on Friday, February 24th. I then got my sister's camera and she took a picture of the object before it disappeared. It moved slightly for a bit, and I know for a fact it wasn't a star because it was far too bright. It wasn't a satellite or plane because it wasn't moving like either of them. It was a very subtle movement. When inspecting the photo, my sister zoomed in on the object and it was a triangle shape. Any suggestions as to what it may be? Did anyone else see it? D. Flower. Alright, and there's no video here, just the images. Click on this, see if we can get a better, there we go. Alright, that's first sighting. Alright, next one here. This comes to us from the North Wales Weekly News. Conwy UFO sightings. Creepy Conwy. The hills above Conwy, Penmawr, and Llanfairpwllgwyn have long been a hotspot for UFO sightings. I know I didn't pronounce those right. The area between Conwy Mountain and the upland ridges from which the backdrop of Pen and Llan are formed from granite as a remnants from a prehistoric volcano. Human settlements found in the hills date back to the Bronze Age, as the remains of Druid ceremonial monuments still exist as evidence of the area's rich history. But a more recent phenomena indicates stranger goings-on in the hills above Conwy and the two slate towns. Excuse me. In the two slate towns, in early December 1979, retired post office engineer Richard Vaughan reported a UFO over Conwy Mountain. Mr. Vaughan of Landenau spotted the strange oval object while walking in a gale. The UFO was described as a white-colored on top and dark underneath. I saw something fly over Conwy Mountain, then it stopped for 3 minutes, moved on, stopped again, and moved on and disappeared in a glow, he said. What puzzles me is how this thing like that could stay in the wind. I thought at first I was imagining things. Alright, more to the story. I'm going to leave you with that amount right there. Next one here. Incredible story. A flying saucer lost control and crashed in Nazi Germany before the Roswell incident. Roswell, New Mexico is famous in terms of a crashed aircraft, but another story surfaced saying an alien craft crashed at the countryside of Nazi Germany 10 years before the Roswell incident. The story is allegedly covered up by both the U.S. and USSR for over 70 years. According to the story, the Nazis have been basing their research on wingless disc aircraft on the flying saucer. Moreover, the crashed alien craft was allegedly the actual basis of Hitler and Himmler's near obsession with exotic technology and flying saucers. The amazing studies of SS physicists that developed flying saucers in the Bell, a motor that neutralized gravity and ripped a gash into the very fabric of time-space continuum, makes amazing effects, were also made possible through studies of flying saucers that crashed. Nazi Germany is the first real superpower in the world, rising from the ashes of the old German Republic in 1937. During the same year, aliens crashed their troubled craft into the German countryside, according to the story. Allegedly, the German army quickly arrived at the crash site, picked up the pieces. However, no record was has found if bodies were also recovered. According to what has been alleged about the crash, arrived to the German authorities, they immediately ordered aeronautical experts to study the remains of the saucer. It is said that the remains of the damaged saucer were brought into a warehouse facility within 24 hours security, and some were brought to a facility near the Austrian border. Alright, I'm going to leave the rest of this for you. Next up, this is a disc. This comes to us from Scott Waring Blogspot. White UFO disc over Vina del Mar, Chile during the sunset on the 27th of February. Okay, you can see right up here as we're looking, there's something right there as well. This is a great capture of a UFO that was seen during the sunset at the beach. I said time and time again, if you want to see a UFO sighting, watch the skies during the sunset, because this is when the shields weaken and allow you to see them for 30 seconds up to 15 minutes. Simple science, because the sun to directly the right of the UFO makes the shields work harder and have to bend the light 270 degrees rather than 180, and the shield is supposed to do. Oh yeah, copy this video please in case he gets nervous and deletes it when his video shoots up. Happens a lot. Alright, let's take a look at this here. Alright, there we go. Out there in the sunset. Alright, very good. Check that out. And next story comes to us from UFO Digest. Is a face of a reptilian ET in the Bishop's Pontifical Chartres, Orleans in 1237. This is by Carolyn Shield. Middle-aged paintings have recently been viewed with different eyes by UFO enthusiasts who are searching for information of extraterrestrials and UFOs. Many paintings have been found that now show possible UFO encounters and possible flying saucers. The Vatican's recent conference on alien life and other planets in the universe and the ramifications on Christianity took many by surprise. The Vatican may know more about life on other planets than we know. The kings and queens of France had astrologists to give them knowledge of the heavens. I'll show you this link in a moment here. Charles Cathedral stained glass shows the signs of the zodiac in multiple places. The zodiac played a big role in the Middle Ages. It was by the stars that crops were planted. The Sumerians in their ancient tablets. Astrology was an occult science. It continued even in the Middle Ages, and many queens had their court astrologers such as Queen Elizabeth and Dr. Dee. Blanche Castel Passler shows her interest in the heavens and how this knowledge was sacred only to the royal families. The Cathedral of Chartres reflects this ancient knowledge of the stars, which was considered sacred. I've been studying the Middle Ages and the time of the Crusades. I came upon the stained glass windows of Chartres Cathedral, which was built upon the Capetian family of Blanche Castile and Saint Louis. Blanche Castile was educated, and she made sure her children were too. We see in St. Louis and her Bibles that geometry, astronomy, and astrology were considered sacred knowledge, of which in their Bibles was shown. In stained glass windows. Okay. I'm going to leave this to you, but let me get on to the picture part of this here. These are some of the images that you can see here. First image. This is the birth of Jesus, and up here you can see an object. This is an ancient image from the Book of Hours. It's the Nativity. There's what looks like a flying saucer right there. Here is the stained glass window, and in this stained glass window what it says is, it's an intriguing scene because you've got this person who seems to be talking to a very, very large person. And the suggestion here is that perhaps this is one of the Nephilim, one of the giants, and that this is just a normal-sized being talking to a giant-type being. This is a stained glass window. What is that doing there? And the very last one, which the article talked about as part of the cathedral here, look in the letter P right here. You got this. What is that right there? Some are saying that this is an alien. And if so, what is this doing here in the cathedral? Good questions all. So check it out. See what you think. Time for us to wake up. I'll be right back.
What if our government was responsible for some of the greatest crimes against this nation? Would you really want to know? These are big questions, but these questions deserve answers. It's time to demand the truth. People shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of them. 9/11 was an inside job. Kennedy was killed by the CIA. Jimmy Carter saw UFO. Answers to secrets you need to know. So wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. The evidence is overwhelming. Step past your fear, take a look. Illuminati lies keep growing, but they're illusion from your eyes. And wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. What would our founding fathers say if they were alive today? Must be turning in their graves. Redcoats are coming, big brothers watching. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. What if I land and two if I see? And I and the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. When a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Patriots arise. It's time to demand the truth.
Okay. I'm going to get to the second part of the Stephen Bassett interview momentarily. But first, I have one story I want to report. Andrew Breitbart. I don't know if you know who he is. He is someone who's has been very outspoken about what's going on. He's certainly a patriot, a warrior. He has been putting out controversial information, challenging politicians in the mainstream for some time now. Well, you may or may not agree with him. Doesn't matter. This thing is, a couple days ago, he made an announcement. Obama College Gate on the way. Yesterday, during a speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference, Andrew Breitbart gave his audience and the C-SPAN viewers a preview of what's to come during the 2012 general election against Barack Obama. He said the mainstream media refused to vet Obama in 2008 and that he will not go unvetted in 2012. Breitbart said he has videos of Obama in college that nobody has seen, considering he's the man who took down Acorn and Anthony Weiner. This could be good. And then this. Last night, Andrew Breitbart died. He died in Los Angeles. It was said that he died of natural causes. The story says that he was walking shortly after midnight in Brentwood, where he lived, and just dropped dead. So, do you think there's a coincidence that a few days ago he said he had some video on Obama that nobody has seen before, and then today he's dead? Do you think there's any coincidence to that? I don't. I don't at all. So it just goes to show you about how much of a thug Obama actually is, and it's too bad. It's too bad that these things go on, and hopefully things are gonna. I don't know what's gonna happen, but that's just crazy. That is absolutely crazy. All right. What I want to do now is I want to get on to the second part of our interview. Yesterday I did part one of an interview with Stephen Bassett about UFO disclosure and the disclosure petition 2 called the Rockefeller Initiative. We have the link at our site, firstcontactradio.com. On the left-hand side, you'll see the link where you can click and go and sign the petition. I am going to let me go over and let me play this, and that way you can hear what's going on. Here we go. Let me set you up, and we are off. Enjoy.
That are still not, I think there may be some people in the audience who are still not quite getting the importance of this. Mm-hmm. And so what I want to do now is I want to give you a little taste of what these documents are saying, what's going on. And if you'll indulge me a little bit, it's not going to be, I think, too boring.
Okay.
I've gone now to ParadigmResearchGroup.org. I have gone to the Rockefeller Initiative section there, where you see photos of the principals. The key principals on the government side were Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, John Gibbons, the OSTP director, advisor John Podesta, and Associate Attorney General Webster Hubbell. Those who were watching this, I call them the watchers, who are aware of it fully, perhaps not directly engaged, were Albert Gore, Leon Panetta, and Bill Richardson. There were some secondary principals who were mentioned and somewhat engaged on this. That includes Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird, former Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird, Senator Claiborne Pell, Senator Patty Murray, Marie Galbraith, a known personage in Washington, Secretary of Air Force Sheila Widnall, and Congressional Representative Stephen Schiff. The researchers that were involved included Don Berliner, Antonio Huneeus, Richard Hall, Robert Teets, Dr. John Mack, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Dr. Stephen Greer, Dr. Bruce McAbee, Linda Moulton Howe, Dr. Jacques Vallée, Colin Andrews, Carl Flock. And then other principals on the public side, actually the key principals on the public side included Lawrence Rockefeller, Henry Diamond, his attorney, former Army Intelligence Dr. C.B. Scott Jones, who was heading the Human Potential Foundation at the time that was funded by Lawrence Rockefeller, and journalist Richard Farley, who was C.B. Scott Jones's right-hand man. Okay, all well and good. And by the way, later on, not too many years ago, when the Clinton Library, when the Clintons' documents that were couched under the Presidential Records Act became available right away, Grant Cameron was in there with multiple requests and has gotten additional documents, including photos from the Clinton Library showing Hillary Clinton at Rockefeller's Ranch in that 1995 visit, and as well as confirmation that helped to assure that she was in fact talking with Rockefeller about the initiative. We have other photos with Bill Clinton there, so we know they were there, and we're virtually certain that they talked about the initiative. This is in '95. But I'm going to go on down. I'm going to hit the thumbnail. This is the document that launched this initiative, and this will one day be an historical document of significance. And let me read it to you.
Okay.
All of these documents had the FOIA cover, right? And then under the cover would then be the document itself. And this is the memorandum that launched the initiative on March the 29th. It was to Dr. John Gibbons, Ph.D. It was from Lawrence's attorney, Henry Diamond, and it was regarding a request for a meeting with Dr. Gibbons for Lawrence S. Rockefeller to take place on or about April 12th or April 13th. Now, when you listen to this, and most of the stuff I'm gonna present to your listeners is how appropriate the tone was. It wasn't overdone. It was couched in a very professional way because this was a very professional and appropriate approach. It wasn't hyperbolic, right? And that's good. That's what you would expect. Right. Lawrence, and again, this is the memo to Gibbons from attorney Henry Diamond. Lawrence S. Rockefeller, who was a leading U.S. conservationist, businessman, and philanthropist, is anxious to have a brief meeting with Dr. Gibbons to discuss the potential availability of government information about unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial life. Notice those three words. As one who has had a long-time interest in environmental and spiritual issues, which is true, Mr. Rockefeller, with other leading citizens, note that, is planning to make an approach to President Clinton on this subject. Prior to such an approach, Mr. Rockefeller would appreciate the opportunity of discussing the issue with Dr. Gibbons in order to make his communication to the President as useful as possible. The basic message to the President is that there is a belief in many quarters that the government has long held classified information regarding UFOs, which has not been released, and that the failure to do so has brought about unnecessary suspicion and distrust. Note those words. Many believe that the release of such information, if it exists, right, again, they're being reasonable, on a basis consistent with national security considerations, would be a significant gesture, which would increase confidence in government. The meeting should take no more than 45 minutes to an hour. Mr. Rockefeller will be accompanied by Scott Jones, president of the Human Potential Foundation, and Henry Diamond, a Washington attorney and longtime associate of Mr. Rockefeller, known to Gibbons. And thus began the Rockefeller Initiative. Now, let me just go to two documents that, in the light of the political realities of the last 10 years, should drive home the point that there is news here to any editor or reporter who is not suffering from a debilitating mental disease. Right. The first one is written late in 1995, and this is after the Clintons had met with Rockefeller at his ranch in Wyoming. It was accompanied by a draft of the letter to that Rockefeller wanted to send to Clinton. We believe this letter was sent, but that would have been in the Clinton records, and they're still trying to get that. This letter was written on November the 1st, 1995. It was from Henry Diamond, Rockefeller's attorney, and it was to Jack Gibbons, the head of the OSDP. By the way, before I read it, let me mention something else.
Okay.
Dr. John Gibbons, I'm quite sure, would rather have pulled his toenails out with a pair of pliers than have to deal with this when it showed up in his door, March 29th of 1993. Perhaps he contacted the White House and said, oh, what's going on here, and please, we got to stop this. Mr. President, or going through Leon Panetta on this, said, Leon, tell the President he's got to call Rockefeller and tell him I can't do this. They can't do it. Maybe he did that, maybe not. But Lawrence played a card that was brilliantly done. What Lawrence did was, at some point in this approach early on, he let it be known to Gibbons or others in the White House that as part of his efforts to advance this issue, he was seriously considering placing a full-page ad in every newspaper in the United States calling for the release of UFO files in government hands and the reinvestigation of the issue, get things going again, because this thing obviously was not going away and it was very important. I estimated that at the time, in dollars of that time, late early 90s, it would have cost Rockefeller about $30 million to do that. Meaning, virtually, America wakes up one morning and there's a full-page ad in virtually every paper in the country. And that would have not been a problem for him. That would have been the return on his investments, maybe a couple of months' worth of return on his investments. And not surprisingly, what happened was he was told, well, now wait, let's don't rush into this, Lawrence. So get hasty. Well, let's talk. Come on in. Let's have a meeting. Let's see what we can do here. All right? Very smart. Very smart. Okay. All right. And he never did. He never did publish those or have such an advertisement placed in the newspapers. So that brings us to the letter of November 1, 1995. Dear Jack, it's not long. Attached are a draft letter to the president, which Lawrence has been discussing with Mrs. Clinton and her staff. And two, a draft report of the best evidence about UFOs. Lawrence thinks that it is perhaps timely to send a letter to the president. We think the best evidence report, although we haven't viewed it in detail or analyzed it, is a good piece of work. Lawrence would like to discuss these items by telephone, perhaps on Thursday, November 2nd, between 11:30 and 12:30, if this is convenient. Sincerely, Henry Diamond. Now let's go to another letter, which is even more intriguing. Okay. This is just about 2 months later, and this is now a letter from Lawrence Rockefeller himself to Jack Gibbons, OSTP Director and Science Advisor, dated February the 5th, 1996. And this is remarkable. It reads, one moment. Dear Jack, we appreciate your taking the time last week for our very productive telephone call. As always, your knowledge of the scientific and federal government scene is particularly useful to those of us trying to be helpful as citizens. As soon as the best evidence report, the report written by Don Berliner and coordinated by Marie Galbraith, who is the wife of an ambassador, which we have referred to as the Bootsy Report, Marie was referred to as Bootsy Galbraith, that was her nickname, is published, we will send you a copy. This report is an unusual combined effort of the three major UFO organizations. This was CUFOS, MUFON, and FUFOR, which came together in coalition at the time to assist in putting this information together for the OSTP. We believe that it is quite factual and avoids sensationalism. We, of course, would be very much interested in your reaction. As you suggested, we will ask those who worked on the report to put forward 2 or 3 names who might be candidates for a pilot project to assess the usefulness of the expanded amnesty program we have urged. Now, this is referring to the fact that Rockefeller was also pushing the administration to, through direct executive order, offer amnesty to anyone in the government willing to come forward to talk about the UFOT issue without fear of violating non-disclosure acts. This never happened and almost certainly will never happen until after disclosure. But that, again, gives you a sense of how far Rockefeller was asking the administration to go.
Right, that's pretty good.
Returning to the letter, we would hope that there could be a public-private review of this effort coordinated by your office. And now, a really amazing paragraph. Your willingness to approach the Air Force, the Central Intelligence Agency, and NASA on this project is extremely important. We will await the results of this effort in order to add any significant findings to our proposed letter to the President. We will, of course, take into account the comments you made on the draft. It well may be that it will be timely to put this before the President late this year in order that it might receive attention in a second term.
Wow.
You indicated that you will keep the First Lady's office informed, and we shall as well. Jack, we know you have a great many day-to-day and short-term urgent problems which demand your limited time, so we are particularly grateful for the very responsive attention you are paying to our initiative. Hillary Clinton was one of the most powerful first ladies in American history. She spent 8 years in the White House with an office in the executive branch. She was involved in most of what her husband was doing. She went on to run for President of the United States. And probably should have been the President of the United States, but fate stepped in, and it didn't happen. But she was as close to it as you can get. I don't think there's any question. Had she gotten the Democratic nomination, she would have beaten John McCain. And she would have been the leader of the most powerful nation in the world. She would have had access to a great deal of intelligence information, and she would, of course, have the ability to launch a nuclear war, because we still have thousands of nukes, and they can be targeted at any moment and sent off. And yet, it was not, in her view, important that we should know about the Rockefeller Initiative, the engagement of the UFO ET issue during her husband's administration, that was pointing to the fact that we're not alone in the universe and this phenomenon is real. That is unacceptable, period. If anybody wants to argue that, they are welcome to do so. But I think they will find they have a very small audience in support. And so that is the news. That is what's sitting on the White House website right now. Now, let me go a little further here, because this is again stuff that I don't believe your listeners, probably 1% of your listeners have heard this.
Okay.
And once again, we're reading a couple of pages of 1,000 pages submitted by Freedom of Information Act to Grant Cameron in the year 2000. By the way, let me also point out something else that your listeners may find interesting. The Office of Science and Technology Policy was only able to give those documents to Grant Cameron, because while the Office of Science and Technology, OSTP, was an executive office, it did not come under the Presidential Records Act, which is another law which has to do with the President's records, which you can't file an FOIA request on. They come under that act, and they are then sequestered until, under the current law, 12 years after the administration is out of office, and then they can be requested through the Presidential Library, which is what Cameron did in 2002 when that 12 years was up. The OSTP was exempted, and that's why he got those documents. One of the first things that George Bush did when he came into office was, one, to modify the Presidential Records Act to make it more difficult to get documents from the presidential libraries, including vice presidential documents. I've been referring to his father. And he also shoved the OSTP under the Presidential Records Act so it could not be accessed by the Freedom of Information Act. I just note this in passing. Interestingly enough, one of the first things that President Obama did when he took office was to pull the OSTP back out from under the Presidential Records Act. You see the game that's being played behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So, last thing I'm going to read you is the letter that Rockefeller was wishing to send to the president. It's a draft. We don't know for sure if it was sent, though it's almost on the point in a sense. He knew about it. Unless he could have seen the draft, anybody could provide it to him. But it's possible. But I think it was sent. I think he got it in one form or another, whether it's in the presidential library or not. But it's very revealing, and it's thoughtful, and it's intelligence. It's appropriate. I would have written a stronger letter, but that's okay. And this is what the American people are not seeing because the press simply don't feel there's any news here. The letter would have gone as follows. Dear President Clinton, regarding lifting secrecy on information about extraterrestrial intelligence, Mr. President, let me say why I believe the above subject is so important. There's some wonderful comments in this. Stuff that I have been talking about for many, many years, long before I ever read this, which is not surprising because, I think that this approach is the appropriate approach that many, thoughtful people would take. Mr. President, let me say why I believe the above subject is so important. For some time, I have been interested in the possibility of expanding man's spiritual and intellectual potential. We must fulfill more of our human potential if we are to cope with the increasingly difficult problems which now challenge our quality of life and our very survival. Keeping in mind, remember, this was written roughly in the time of about 1995.
Okay.
In my view, to achieve this greater potential, it is essential to accelerate the recognition of a new paradigm of consciousness which recognizes the oneness of mind, body, and spirit. This is again reflecting his spiritual bent, though he was more than capable of addressing hard realities and nuts and bolts. One possible evidence of a new paradigm of consciousness would be the discovery of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Of course, we must continue to deal primarily with problems on our own planet. However, I have come to believe that the question of whether there is life elsewhere in the cosmos is of great significance. The implications for science, religion, and human potential are enormous. If life does exist elsewhere, we must learn much. We may learn much that will help us here. Your initiative in bringing greater openness to government through the current review of the classification of government documents to eliminate unnecessary secrecy offers a very significant opportunity to advance our knowledge of this question. This letter is to request that as part of this reassessment, you personally and specifically direct a review of current government information policy concerning extraterrestrial intelligence, ETI, including unidentified flying objects, UFOs. It is widely believed that various agencies of the federal government have substantial information concerning the existence or non-existence of UFOs, and that such information may have been unnecessarily withheld from the public as classified for reasons of national security. If this information does exist, and if it were released, it would be received as evidence of a new spirit of partnership between government and its citizens. Note those words. The current classification review is a good step. However, Mr. President, from past experience, there is reason to believe that if there is information being held by federal agencies about ETI and UFOs, it will not be released in a meaningful way without your personal initiative. This is to urge you to expand and accelerate the important movement towards openness you have initiated. We suggest that you consider the following steps be taken now. Direct, this would be by presidential directive, direct that information about ETI and UFOs be given priority in the current classification review. Appoint a coordinator for government information about ETI and UFOs to bring together information from all federal agencies involved, such as the Department of Defense, the Air Force, NASA, the CIA, and other parts of the intelligence community. Your science advisor, Jack Gibbons, might well be the right person for this role. Make it known through federal agencies, such as those named above, that credible witnesses having information about ETI or UFOs will be granted amnesty from relevant oaths or other government constraints. These steps, I respectfully suggest, would further not only the cause of scientific inquiry and knowledge, but also that of public confidence in government and international goodwill. The timing is particularly propitious because as our first post-Cold War president, you have an opportunity to take this important step without many of the national security constraints that have limited government candor with the American people in the past. As an interested and concerned citizen, I stand ready to assist in whatever I can do that you might find useful. Summarize. The Cold War was over. Trust in government had been hit because of the machinations that had to be conducted to win that war. That truth in government was waning. That this might help to restore that trust and, of course, allow people to learn the truth about their role and their place in the universe. Such was the letter to Lawrence Rockefeller. And now, the second thing that people tend to raise, well, what evidence is there that Clinton in any way responded to this? Okay. Let me just give you a few examples.
Okay.
First and foremost, Bill Clinton, and we're getting back to the principles again, Bill Clinton, in one response to the Rockefeller Initiative, tasked his advisor, John Podesta, to come up with a way to redesign the declassification process and get more documents out to the American people, speed up the process, probably expand the parameters and what have you. And John Podesta did exactly that, and he has talked about it publicly. Let me make it clear that there was no reference to UFOs in this effort, which was known to the press and covered by the media. And John Podesta, the man who did that to the president, in 2002 and in 2003, stood at the dais in the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and called for the release of all UFO files. This was approximately 18 months after the president was out of office, in the hands of the government, because the people had a right to know, and it was the law. And you could easily find the key 26 seconds of that first presentation. And we need to get our hands on the entire statement by Podesta, both in 2002, 2003, and we will, by simply going to YouTube and doing a YouTube search on Podesta UFO. Webster Hubbell was a friend of Clinton from Arkansas, who he appointed as Associate Attorney General at Justice. Another thing Clinton did was to ask Hubbell, again, in response to the Rockefeller Initiative, ask Hubbell to check at Justice for information about UFOs and perhaps elsewhere. And Hubbell did. He contacted several agencies. We think he contacted the NORAD and possibly the NRO. Now, that was probably very naive. Clinton made a mistake there, and so did Hubbell. It wasn't that long afterward that Hubbell became one of the targets of the numerous attacks on the presidency, creating the various scandals, Travelgate, Pork Belly Gate, and Whitewater Gate, and so forth. And he came under attack. He was eventually indicted, convicted, and went to prison. But we know this happened because he wrote a memoir called Friends in High Places, where he talks about the president asking him to do that. So there are some examples right there. Bill Richardson, one of the what I call watchers, in 2004, about a little under 4 years after the president left office, wrote a foreword to a book called The Roswell Dig Diaries, in which he called for the reinvestigation of the Roswell incident because he did not believe the Air Force's explanation was satisfactory. This from a Marine pilot. This is all connected to the Rockefeller Initiative ultimately. So there's just a test. But there's another one. There was another secondary principle. Remember Stephen Schiff? During the same period that the Rockefeller Initiative was taking place, it was when Stephen Schiff, a representative from the state of New Mexico, began, in response to numerous queries from his own constituency, began looking into the Roswell incident and trying to find documents and records within government agencies about the Roswell events. And he got the runaround. He was definitely being moved around and treated, well, badly. He didn't like it, and he went public. He went on Larry King and a number of other shows and said, look, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm trying to get records, and they're running me around, and I don't like it. Eventually, the Air Force, I think under a little bit of pressure because of his public statements, did come forward and tell him that he had been looking for the phone records, phone calls in and out of Roswell, which had been extremely, obviously, revealing.
Right.
And he was told that they had been destroyed. Not that long after Stephen Schiff, former Army officer, went public with his dissatisfaction with the response of government to his request, he developed a rather odd and unusual squamous cancer on his outer ear, which they simply couldn't cure. And it moved quickly into his ear and into his brain, and he died while in office. And lastly, sometime just before or after the Rockefeller Initiative came to an end, President Clinton appeared at gave a speech in Ireland. And without being asked, without any prompting at all, happened to mention that he had been sent a letter by a young boy, wanting to know if extraterrestrials really crash landed at Roswell. And he said he didn't know, but he would sure like to know. And you can easily see that speech if you simply go and Google, YouTube search Clinton UFO Ireland. So there you have it. This is the framing for the disclosure petition to the Rockefeller Initiative that is going to be up on the White House website until at least March the 23rd. If we do not have the 25,000 signatures, it will then be deleted. That'll be that, though it will generate press. It will get some exposure. But if we do get the 25,000 signatures, it will remain up until the White House responds and gain more signatures, and that's a whole different ballgame. But all of that is in the hands of the American people and how many are willing to go and sign that petition.
Absolutely. That's the important part.
So that's what I've got for that. Maybe you got some questions about it. Fire away.
No, you were very thorough of everything, and I think it's just amazing that they had this whole organization get together, the Rockefeller Initiative, and how they discussed it, and it never made any major press, as you're saying, and how these people have never any press, and now
major or minor.
And the fact that there's individuals out there that were part of that have never spoken about it, that's even more incredible.
Well, it shows that how much of a bind they're in, that they're trapped in the embargo.
Right.
In fact, the truth embargo has become a prison of its own making. As a result of how this has evolved, the presidency. See, President Carter tried to get access to information. He was told he couldn't have it. Clinton tried to get access. He was told he couldn't have it. And Kennedy tried to get access, and he was told he couldn't have it. They don't have a need to know. You're just the President of the United States. You come, you go. We're the holder of the secrets. We are the protectors of the country, which they are, by the way, and that's admirable. And I believe the people that run the military intelligence community are patriots, and they are doing what they think is best. But they are victims of this. Well, in a sense, the Cold War. The creation of the secret empire and this truth embargo instituted, they couldn't. And here's the dilemma. The president can't really come forward and announce the extraterrestrial presence, disclose, in other words, commit disclosure, without the evidence, without access to significant evidence that may be needed to support it. And the military intelligence community won't give it to him. The military intelligence community has the evidence, but they don't have the authorization to, quote, disclose this to the American people. The commander-in-chief is in charge of them. He is the boss. And so the two are trapped in this embargo, and until enough pressure is applied, most likely by the American media when they start doing their job again, then it will force them to probably have the necessary meetings, behind the scenes, back office meetings, to come to an understanding, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to go, and we can provide you this, and we're happy with that and whatever. And then it can happen. So that's kind of the dynamic there.
Okay, it's nice that we're living in a time where there is a lot more people standing up and speaking about things, and we do see it is making a difference. So if enough people get behind this, who are just tired of the lies, it could be a big deal, real big deal.
You're right, and it's not hard. They go to disclosurepetition.info and they find the direct link to the petition, or they go to whitehouse.gov and go to We the People and find the petition. But either way, they go to the petition, click on it. If they already have an account with We the People, they can sign it in a few seconds. If they don't, they need to create an account. They'll click on that and be sent and they'll be asked to put in their first and last name and their email address. They have the option of putting their city and state, or city and country, because anybody in the world can sign this petition. It's not limited to Americans. Anyone in the world with a computer and an email address can sign this petition. And everybody in the world should be willing to do it or open to it, because this is a global issue. It impacts everyone. It's not just the States.
Well, I've been popping back and forth to the website, and so far every time I go back, there's more signatures.
It's slowly accumulating, but we've got to pick up the pace. They'll get back an email with a password and a verification link. Click on the link, use the password, log in, sign the petition. It's that simple. It is a twitchy site. They still haven't got it perfect. It works poorly with Chrome browser, and Firefox works very well with the Internet Explorer.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to clear your cookies, but overall, and I've got information about this at disclosurepetition.info.
Okay.
And we have only, 24 more days, 25 more days to get those signatures, 25,000. Now, let me finish up with this, if I may.
Okay.
One of the things that has to happen, is starting to happen, but is still has a long way to go, is the American people have got to come out of a kind of trance that they've been put in by decades of massive propaganda that has been raining down on them, not only from the government, but also from marketing. In other words, commercial and government propaganda. It's not as bad as what the Soviets had to deal with, Lord knows, but it's still a lot. And you're kind of in a trance. And because of that, they're not aware of, one, how powerful the Internet is and how important it could be for their lives and the country. And how much opportunity they have to execute collective action, act collectively to get what they want, to change government, to reform government. But they will figure this out, but they need to do it sooner than later. And there has recently been a very powerful example of this, which I'll bring to their attention. Now, I'm not speaking to one side of the issue or the other. I'm talking about the process here. But a couple of weeks ago, two bills, which were very controversial, were about to be voted on in the House and Senate. They both dealt with how to deal with online piracy. One was called Stop Online Piracy Act, that's SOPA. The other was called Protect IP Act, PIPA.
Right. We did a lot about that on the show.
And there was some discussions about it on the Internet and so forth over months, but nothing major was happening, but it was out there. There was people sort of learning about it. Not surprising. As the votes approached, that's when action or direct action began. And that's fine, but sometimes if you wait too long, it's too late. But, of course, the Internet is incredibly fast. And in a matter of a couple of days, what took place was this. About 60 or so well-known sites, the best known and most trafficked being Wikipedia, went black. It was a protest. They went black for 24 hours. But something else happened. The most trafficked site in the world, Google, went and put a big black banner over their logo and had a link at the bottom of the page to express your opposition to the bills, which in the mind of many went too far. In other words, the concept of protecting proprietary rights is good, and we want to do that, but the way they were trying to do it in those bills would have been damaging to the Internet and our access to information, and so there was opposition. In the space of 24 hours, 7 million people signed that petition. Now, obviously, this reflects the massive traffic to Google. I understand that. The point is that 7 million people did take the time to sign that petition. Within 24 hours, the sponsors and chief backers of the bill withdrew their support, pulled the bill, and they will both be revised, and they'll come back at this issue again. That's in 24 hours.
That's pretty amazing.
That's just a taste of what people can do. Now, I'm not going to diminish in any way the importance of the need to address online piracy or the need to maintain integrity and access to the Internet. Believe me, I think they're important. I would contend, though, that the presence of extraterrestrials engaging the human race in the modern era, a presence that may go back thousands of years, as far as we can go back in recorded history, is even more important than that.
Yes.
And there is a petition on the White House website right now where people, if they act collectively, can possibly make history and bring this issue to a head and learn, finally, after 6.5 decades, whether or not they are alone in the universe. Though I can tell you quite easily that we aren't alone in the universe. The evidence is overwhelming, and the only reason that that's not openly acknowledged is the government has deliberately withheld that knowledge, exactly as the Catholic Church withheld the acknowledgement of the new cosmology of a sun-centered solar system where the Earth was not the center of the universe. They actually withheld that for 100-plus years and killed a lot of people to keep that truth from coming out. And recently they apologized for what was a major blunder by the Catholic Church. So there you have it. I hope your listeners will sign this petition. I hope they will spread the link to this petition, and I hope they will send a brief note to the White House for their feedback, and we the people, asking that this petition be given a proper response. I'd like to check back with you maybe later in March on an update, and we can get into it, and we'll see what happens. But
absolutely,
it's a wonderful opportunity. I'm excited about it, and there's many other things coming down the pike here, conferences and new books coming out and so forth, as the issue continues to ripen and ripen and ripen. And all that remains is, when is the U.S. government going to finally end the embargo? And lastly, to anybody in government that may be paying attention here, you really have two options now. Either the U.S. government is going to acknowledge the ET presence, or another nation is going to do so. And so you have to decide how you want that to go.
Exactly. Well, Stephen, I really appreciate your dedication to the disclosure movement, and I know there's a lot of folks that do. So thank you so much for all the hard work you do, because I know it isn't easy.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate what you're doing and all of the shows that are being created on the internet. Freedom of speech is still alive and growing.
Absolutely.
Media is still growing. There's still a lot of consolidation, and there's still some issues, but still, never have we had the ability to get information out, I think, like this, thanks to the net. Yep. And let's see how whatever happens, 2012 is certainly going to be one of the most interesting years that we'll ever live through, and I'm excited about it. So let's check back later in the year.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for being on First Contact Radio, Stephen, and we'll talk very soon.
You're welcome.
All right, take care.
There's still
All right. I just realized my microphone wasn't on. Sorry about that. Go sign this petition here. It's very worthwhile. If you believe in the need for disclosure being released, then this is something that's very important. As you can see here, there are 20,000 signatures needed at this point in time. There's only 4,000 right now. That's not going to cut it at that pace. There's a lot more people that have talked about wanting disclosure, so please go sign the petition. And just be patient when you get to the website, because it does have its glitches. It's strange. It's a government-run website, and it runs as well as the government programs usually do run, which is not very well. So when you get to the website, it does have its problems. I wouldn't be surprised that they are fudging the numbers, as usually happens with these sorts of things. But please go sign the petition. It's very important. This is you could make history right now if we can get the White House to go ahead and make an announcement about this. All right? All right, very good. So that's our interview. Last but not least is our meditation for today. So go ahead and close your eyes, relax, and let us do our meditation. All right, what I'd like you to do today, is, first of all, close your eyes. All right, let's imagine that there are a whole crowd gathered together. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And you are just one of them. And as you look around the crowd, you realize that even though you see others that are different genders, different races and nationalities, you realize that there is still a similarity. Because through all of the differences, the one common thread is we all come from the same creative source, the same creator. And all of the same energy that flows around us flows through us all. The only difference is how we each individually use that energy. Imagine as the energy is all around you, that you're able to take that energy and properly utilize it by allowing it to channel and filter through your 7 chakras. Imagine all the chakras being activated. They're right down the middle of the spine. There's 7 of them. All you have to do is imagine a color associated with each one of the chakras to activate it. At the bottom of the spine, the root chakra, the color is red. Just imagine the color red. And this is the chakra that's drawing the energy up from the earth. And then let the energy raise up a little bit higher from the bottom of the spine all the way to the belly button area. And imagine the color orange. And this chakra deals with your emotional body. Raise the energy up a bit higher, just below the rib cage. And this chakra color is yellow. And this chakra deals with your intellectual body. Raise the energy up higher to the heart. Imagine the color green. This chakra deals with love. Raise the energy up higher to the throat. Imagine the color blue. This is the chakra that deals with the way we communicate. Raise the energy up higher, right between the 2 eyebrows. That's your 3rd eye, and imagine the color violet. This is the chakra that allows us to see through the dimensions of space and time. And then raise the energy up to the top of your head. This is called your crown chakra. The color is indigo, and the light continues on up into the cosmos, becoming white light as it connects. And imagine yourself there, standing in this crowd, connected energetically to the cosmos and to the earth. And as you look around, just hold your arm out and touch the person on the shoulder to your right and to the left. And imagine everybody's doing the same thing. And as you do, imagine that we are all assisting each other in using the energy properly. Imagine that we are all taking a moment to honor our similarities and to look past our differences. And imagine as we are honoring our similarities, we're all able to understand the truths and differentiate those truths from the lies. Now let's just imagine one last thought, and that's for everybody to have a great, fantastic day, no matter who they are, friends or enemies. Just send out love all around the planet, because love, my friends, is the greatest source of healing we have. And if we share it, we can fix the problems, and the enemies will no longer be your enemies. Imagine what the world would be like if we all just operated from a place of love, from a place of truth, from a place of integrity. Sometimes in a world with so many challenges, it's hard to imagine. But if we could just imagine, all of us, miraculous things can happen. As we're thinking good thoughts for everybody, let's bring our energy and attention back to the present moment, and we'll do so on the count of 3. 3, coming back to the present moment filled with confidence. 2 coming back to the present moment filled with faith, and 1 coming back to the present moment happy, healthy, and whole. Happy, healthy, and whole. There you have it. That is it. We've made it through another show, Prayer Meditation. I hope that the information will be useful to you. Please go check out the links, sign the petition, and let's force this administration to go out and do the right thing. Tell people what's really going on with this UFO phenomena. That's all I got for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more news information. You have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.